Hello, and welcome back to my garage. In this video, we're actually going to be taking a look at what affects the value of each individual part. In the last video, we did learn that all the parts are basically valued at the same, except for maybe a couple cents between the body panels and the engine panels. What we did not learn in the last video was that each car's parts values are worth different amounts. So this BART over here, each panel for this BART is worth $102 rather than the $52 for the four-door Lad, and the coupe parts are worth $72 instead of the $52, as we learned in that last video, link above. And we also learned in that last video that if you take off 10 parts from a vehicle, it will drop your overall condition by 1 star, but we did not take a look at what happens when these other conditions are lowered, your clean state, rust state, and color condition, when those are lowered and what effects those actually have. So right now with this car, it is at all 5 stars all the way across the board. So that means each individual part here is worth $71.44. So if we take that off and then we put this one back on and then we take off the hubcap, we can see it's still the same, 92964. That's worth $71.44. And then if we do the same thing with the oil filter, we can see it's exactly the same. So these are all worth $71.44. So I wanted to show that even if you have a car with 0 stars on overall condition, all these parts are still actually worth the same. They're still worth it. Right now it's at $5,579. It is still worth the $71.44 or 43 cents, right? So I just wanted to reiterate that no matter what your overall condition is, the parts will all be the exact same price. But that is not true when it comes to the wrong color or rust. These two parts have rust on them. They have different amounts of rust, so this one's actually worth less than this one. But it does not change the difference in the prices of brand new parts. So if we put this one on, for instance, that's going to change the value, of course, down to 11,866.34. But if we take off these wires again, it's going to drop it down to 11,805.52. These wires are now worth $60.82 instead of the 71.44. And that's going to be true for all the parts. It's going to bring down the value of every single part. Same with this one. It's still worth $60.82. And then we could see as well with the hubcap 805.52, it's still worth $60.82. Now, if we add 2 rusted panels on here, they stack. It actually stacks. So if we take this one off, and then we put this green one on, that's all rusted out. Okay, so now that we have both rusted panels on there, we can see the value has dropped down to $9,952.18. So now if we pull off these wires, it'll drop down to $9,991, which means these wires are now worth $51.27, as before when we just had the one bad panel, it was $60.82, and then when they were all good, $71.44. And this is true for all parts. They're all going to be at the 99.091 rate, and same with the hubcap. So this means all parts are now worth $51.27. Now it still stacks. It just keeps on stacking. So if we do this exact same thing with this trunk over here, and we take this off and put on the rusted trunk, it is now worth $82.56.72. But if we take these wires off, it now drops down to $82.13.98, which means these wires are now worth $42.74. And same with the oil filter. It's the exact same thing. It is worth $42.74, and so on. The windows will be worth a little bit differently. Instead of being $42.74, they're worth $42.72. Basically, all the parts on a car are worth the same amount, except for a couple cents. A couple cents is the only thing that kind of differentiates them. Now, we do want to show that bad engine parts don't actually affect that value of all the parts. This one is at 13,87250. If we take this off, it does bring it down to 80106, which means that this part is actually still worth 7144. And that goes for all the parts. So the bad engine parts won't affect the value of individual parts. It just affects the overall value of the whole car, as this part's not as worth as much as, say, a brand new one. You know what I mean? This one will be worth 7144, where this rusted worn out piece is not worth that much. Okay, now I have some over here that's not rusted and they're just painted. Now, as we've seen with every part that we put on here that was rusted and the wrong color, it decreased the value of these individual parts by almost $10 every single time. We went from $71.44 down to $60.82, then down to $51.27, and then down to $42.74. So it's roughly $10 to $9 per part, per bad part that's on here. Now, with just bad paint or different colored paint jobs, it only actually decreases the value of each part only by a couple dollars, like $2 to $3. So it's not as dramatic as, say, a rusted piece. Okay, so I think that's pretty much going to be it. I just wanted to get over the basics here, that your overall condition doesn't affect individual pricing, but your rust, color condition, and your clean state does. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I think I pretty much just covered the basics. So just remember, each car's parts are worth a different amount. And just remember that each panel that you have with rust on it is going to bring down the value of every part, right? Every part's value will drop depending on how many panels you have with rust. So if you're doing quick flips, you want to be looking for basically a car that has as many panels as possible with as much rust as possible, right? Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else to the pricing. Yeah, so I think that's going to be it. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And of course, we will see you guys in the next one later on, everybody.